Previously on Yu-Gi-Oh! History, we saw Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal phasing out the 5Ds era with the last hurrah of familiar decks, while making plenty of tops with the likes of Six Samurai, TG Stun, and Tengu Plant. The meta was ultimately funneling into an environment composed of new decks. The big three popular strategies would be Insector, Windup, and Dino Rabbit. Doesn't that just have a cool ring to it? Dino Rabbit. All three have their own distinct strategies, and powerful engines akin to more modern decks. So with the pieces in play, the format will become one of controversy, feature a major ruling change, and at the time, the largest TCG event ever. And real quick, the Janjo Zone is a one-man band, and it takes a lot to get you the premium Yu-Gi-Oh! Content you crave. So consider becoming a Janjo patron for early bird access to new videos, or just to support me further. Yeah! Our adventure starts with the March 2012 list. This list is like none before, as attached to it there was a lot of controversy. Keep in mind that the previous September 2011 list hit strong, problematic cards like Royal Oppression and Giant Trunade, and to hurt the top decks otherwise like Tengu Plant and Six Sam. Following that, the decks weren't dead, yet it did signal their sunset as stronger decks were entering the metagame. Yet, despite the decks of old still topping and winning events, it was a slow but sure decline as duelists warmed up to new strategies. Come March, and the clear meta direction was in the path of forces brought up by the latest core sets. How would Konami answer these new threats? Even if Insectors and Windups have yet to grab first at a YCS, their popularity and growth potential was clear as the Fiend's reflection. At the very least, Dino Rabbit was by far the most prominent topping deck at the last couple events. That said, newly forbidden, Glow Up Bulb, Spore, Trishula, and Trap Dust Shoot. Okay, sure, those cards are strong, proven by their track record. However, that felt like something that should have happened back in September. Limited were TG Striker and Agent of Mystery, Earth. Interesting. I mean, TGs were good, but again, it wasn't a reflection of the meta as a whole. Earth is really odd considering Agents fell off hard in recent months. Semi-Limited also only brought two cards down, Reborn Tengu and Ultimate Offering. Once again, it was another curious choice as Tengu lost a lot of power and I don't recall anyone seriously playing Offering. Needless to say, this was a weird list, one that hit Tengu Plant, TG, and Agent. In all fairness, they were seeing some play, but not a ton. Konami simply said, out with the old and in with the new. Duelists all around were absolutely flabbergasted.
That's not even a word and I agree with you!
No new deck was hit in any capacity, and even the semi-limiting of Torrential Tribute was already a counter to Tengu Plant. It got to the point where Konami, no joke, put out an article explaining the list. They never do that. I mean, they should always do that, but this was a rare exception. They referenced YCS Atlanta for what TG and Agent could potentially do. However, that was a one-off instance, a rogue deck at that, and not reflective of the competitive environment. Many duelists consider the March 2012 list to be one of the worst lists in the game's history. Let's not continue on a sour note. A few weeks later on March 20th would be the Premium Collection Tin that gives us a few new goodies such as Junk Forward, Kagemusha Knight, Mass Hero Acid, and Void Ogre Dragon. It also gave us some awesome OCG imports like Meteor Black Dragon, Fiend's Mirror, and Fire Wing Pegasus. Definitely awesome. It wouldn't be long before we're back in meta-relevant releases as the March released Shonen Jump April promotional card, Acid Golem of Destruction, would come out. While it's tied to Xyz material to attack and to save you life points, its low rank and powerhouse nature cannot be denied. Then we arrive at the end of the road to Long Beach, California. This YCS had over 4,000 in attendance, which at the time was the largest YCS. Take that, Edison. Like Edison, oddly enough, Long Beach contained a variety of decks in Top Cut, which was bound to happen with so many duelists eager to play. Top 4 specifically were 4th place Hero Beat by Joji Orlando, another fellow Yu-Gi-Oh! Historian, This deck was one of familiarity, a deck using Neos Alias and its hero and Gemini support, plus a skill drain stun strategy. Yeah, it's a stun deck that used a lot of beaters, which excelled with a heavy back row in lieu of special summoning. Honestly, of all the decks of previous formats, I'm surprised Konami has yet to hit hero beat in any real capacity. Third place was Piper Chaos by Gabriel Perez. This deck revolved around Mystic Piper, a weak monster that contributed itself to draw a card, and if it was a level 1 monster, you can draw another card. There were a lot of options to put in your deck, DD Crow, Effect Veiler, Kinkabio, and so on. It was a solid strategy to turbo through your deck to get strong pieces that synergized with the Chaos engine. Second place was Dino Rabbit by Simon He, which, when compared from the last event at YCS Leipzig, cut the Drac Waiba and lower the deck count for more consistency. And at first place we have, nope, not Dino Rabbit, nor Insecto, or even Windup. Rather, Michael Balan would win with Dark World. In this new format, the deck lost Trap Dust Shoot, so Dark World wasn't as powerful as events prior, in which it failed to live up to expectations. But it was a fan favorite deck, and Balan had some useful tools, one of which was Malefic Stardust Dragon, which protected the gates of Dark World. He also opted out of Morphing Jar, which would have potentially helped the opponent. He also decided to use a ton of draw cards to pick up the deck's speed, Dark World Dealings, Drag Down, Upstart Goblin, and Reckless Greed. This allowed you more options when going for a discard play. Also consider that, by this point, many duelists have cooled off on Dark World, put more stock in Dino Rabbit, or just generally expected more randomness from Long Beach and didn't have the hard counters. With quite the variety, what would this mean moving forward? Post YCS Long Beach, we had YCS Lima, which returned Dino Rabbit to dominance. Entering April on the 14th was YCS Dallas, which, while Dino Rabbit once again nabbed first by Nizar Sarhan, the top 3 decks otherwise were interesting. Third was Hero Beat by Justin Duren that went more pure hero and not the Beast King variant. Second was Chaos Dragon by Alexander Reed. We've discussed the Dragons Collide structure deck in my previous history video, but now the seeds start to bloom. Chaos Dragon was a solid mix of engines. Chaos, Dragons, and Light Swarm. Self-explanatory, I know. Regardless, it was essentially the next evolution of the Chaos deck. Its main strength was getting big monsters on field that other decks had trouble getting over. BLS, DAD, Light Pulsar, Darkness Metal, etc. All the pieces were there for a complex, new deck that spoke for itself come the next event, which, funnily enough, was the same day as YCS Dallas. At YCS Toulouse, France, Chaos Dragon by Peter Gross beat many contemporaries, even Bubble Beat by Rodrigo Togores. Clearly, the rise of the dragons had begun. A few days later on the 17th was starter deck Xyz Symphony that introduced the Jin archetype. The 2 big new cards were Maystroke the Symphony Jin, which had a Book of Moon-like effect, and Tempo the Percussion Jin, which can remove an opposing Xyz monster's material. This was solid for reducing the amount of effects your opponent could use, and was a great answer to Acid Golem. While nothing game-breaking, they were nonetheless useful toolbox options in the extra deck. Then on April 28th, we have a date of note at YCS Chicago. The top cut would be nothing of terrible interest, showcasing familiar decks. The important factor was that this would be the last YCS with Ignition priority. Even though the OCG removed priority in 2011, the TCG decided not to follow them right away. It eventually caught up, and after Chicago, cards like BLS, Tour Guide, and Rescue Rabbit lost some of their on-summon utility. These powerful cards can now get stopped right on summon with the likes of Bottomless Trap Hole and Effect Veiler. Not even Rabbit can use its effect for cost to avoid the opposition. So the question must be asked, why? Why did Konami remove priority in Yu-Gi-Oh? Potentially for the reasons I just stated. There's no interaction if you can just summon a monster and get its effect off right away. Using Rabbit or even a card like Demise on summon was incredibly powerful, and without Prio, fair play is increased a bit. If it were legal, Chaos Emperor Dragon now has way more outs. On the flip side, counterplay with cards like Torrential Tribute and Fiendish Chain gains strength. Also, just in general, Ignition Priority confused a lot of duelists who weren't already super familiar with the ruling. Simply put, removing Prio was a way to balance the game. And that takes us to my birthday on May 11th with the next core set, Galactic Overlord, HBD to me. This set added a lot of new cards from the Heraldic and Light Ray archetypes to singular cards like Nightbeam, Card D, and Inzektor Ladybug. We also received a plethora of powerful Xyz monsters, most notably Big Eye to steal monsters, Photon Strike Bouncer to negate a monster effect and inflict burn damage, and Photon Papillo Operative to force a monster into attack position with attack reduction. Chaos Dragon would make use of some of these, including Bouncer and Queen Dragon Jin. Windup would use Papillo on their own Windup Rat, and Big Eye was great in general for Xyz extensions or stealing opposing boss monsters. It's a walking snatch steal. Galactic Overlord is a set defined by its new Xyz monsters, and they did not disappoint in adding spice to the card pool. With new cards in play, we head to YCS Philly. Aside from a fun final countdown deck in top 16, top 2 would both be Chaos Dragons, cementing their place in the meta scene. Dragons and dinosaurs were the name of the game here at the first post-Prio YCS. Yet at the top in the final match, it was a Chaos Dragon mirror. First place, which was Feng Chen, played a solid 40-card build with less reliance on the Lightsworn engine. He also played Forbidden Lance, a quick play spell that protected his monsters from getting hit with back row, especially now on summon, and it could reduce attack on bigger monsters. Even with the loss of Prio, some duelists were shocked that Chaos Dragon was able to knock down Dino Rabbit as much as it did. Perhaps Prio No More scared some duelists from playing the deck in favor of new or just different strategies. In turn, this created a shockwave that redefined how people viewed the meta. The end of the month, we would see Battle Pack Epic Dawn, designed for sealed play. Neat. This was a needed release for a few reasons. For one, it gave us Gem Knight Pearl, which is a solid rank 4 beater, winning over even Utopia. Secondly, Epic Dawn included a bunch of much needed reprints like Raigeki and Graceful Charity, which last saw prints in 2008, Harpy's Feather Duster, which last saw prints in 2006, and Tour Guide, which desperately needed a reprint given its meta popularity. The month would not stop there, as the 30th would see the Shonen Jump membership promotional card, the Shock Master. It can detach to stop activation of a declared card type. This could absolutely stop decks in their tracks if they were geared towards one card type, although requiring 3 level 4 monsters was a tall order. Starbucks level, bitch. Then, with a June release of the Samurai Warlord structure deck, the card pool was finalized for the format's final event at the 2012 North American World Championship Qualifier from the 29th through July 1st. Despite Chaos Dragon getting to top 4, the final round would be Windup versus Windup. Tyler Tapman would win the gold. Yes, the same guy who played Final Countdown just one event prior and topped Chicago with Gravekeeper won with, honestly at this point, a rogue option. The thing was, despite not winning any major gold, the Windup loop was still a very solid play, and the deck wasn't as glass cannon as Dino Rabbit, or even as fragile to a strong side game as Dark World. Combine that with a skilled duelist, and you have a recipe for a national winning deck. And that's where our story comes to an end. The first half of 2012 was nothing short of wild. From a controversial ban list, to the game's largest TCG event, to the loss of Ignition Priority, and all the way to Nationals redefining the top decks, this was certainly one way to kick off the game's 10th year in the West. Dino Rabbit, Chaos Dragon, Inzektor, Hero Beat, Dark World, and Windup would be the most prominent decks with plenty of rogue options around. Shame that Inzektor was the one deck that has yet to win any YCS events despite how close they keep coming. Would the second half of the year keep up the pace, or will the chaos settle down as we close out the first revolution of the Zexal era? Tune in next time to find out.